government of Rwanda, through the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources, set out goals to increase agricultural production so as to ensure food security and improved incomes from agriculture. Agricultural production remains the backbone of Rwanda's economy. But the sector faces several challenges, such as small average land holdings, limited commercial agriculture, poor water use management, insufficient extensive services, and poor access to markets and financial services. After discussions between the government of Rwanda and the Dutch government, a new method of doing things was introduced to bring together scientists at the university level in Rwanda and the vocational training centers to fit into a more practical approach of agriculture education in Rwanda, so that education mainly focuses at the farm level. That's why SEAD project was introduced. The project is funded by the Dutch government through NOFIC, which is under the Netherlands Initiative for Capacity Development in Higher Education, with the total amount of 10 million euros. This was to help agricultural sector work with other sectors, as it was indicated by the researcher on this project.
When we look at the agriculture sector, we see a sector that is rather, let's say, alone. Not in a sad sense of the word, but we see that the agriculture sector is lacking the support from other sectors. When you want to bring out the strength in a sector, you need to look for the synergies and need to look for collaborations that are maybe not the most obvious at first sight. So when we were developing the project, we were looking, because it is at the end of the day a niche project, Netherlands Initiative for Capacity Building in Higher Education, and TVET. That is not in the niche acronym, but it is there, explicitly there for Rwanda. So we are looking at the education institutions. But as the head of corporation said, we are not doing that by just singling out one institution and support that institution with some curriculum development, some training, and goodbye. We are looking at a complete consortium of institutions, because we see that when higher education, more specifically universities, would collaborate much more together, closely together, in areas of the provision but also the development of education programs, and also in research, and also in extension services, then we can establish a synergy within the education sector. Because universities have something to learn from TVET. For instance, competence-based training. For instance, very much in the provision of practical trainings. And the other way around, TVET has a lot to learn from the university sector. Research, for instance. And together, in tandem, we can have the best of both worlds. And we are focusing on agriculture and water management. But as said, we are looking wider. We are, at the end of the day, of course, trying to provide the private sector with the right graduates, with the skilled people.
In a dialogue with the government of Rwanda, we came to the conclusion together that something had to change in the way the agricultural education in Rwanda is taking place. And what the government, especially the Minister of Agriculture, but also the National Capacity Building Secretariat, told us is that we have to try and see a method that brings together scientists at the level of the University of Rwanda and the vocational training centers in Rwanda to feed into a more practical approach of agricultural education in Rwanda. And that's where we started, working together with stakeholders in Rwanda to formulate this program. It took us about 2 years, and finally all the stakeholders signed up, you can imagine it's a completely new approach.
Strengthening Education for Agriculture Development Project, SEAD, aims at supporting farmers to address the critical constraints that limit the quantity and the quality of their production and their competitiveness. Both the head of Development Cooperation of the Netherlands Embassy in Rwanda and the Executive Secretary of NCBS believes that the project is timely and important.
Well, the big change will be that the education will focus on what happens at farm level. What are the problems that the farmers in Rwanda face? And how do we solve that? How do we solve it from a scientific point of view, but also from a vocational point of view? And that combination, and that is the experience that we have in the Netherlands, is something that works very well. And that will lead, certainly also in Rwanda, to higher production and higher income for farmers. And that is the objective of this program.
Broadly, this project aims at strengthening higher education and TVET capacity to contribute to the agricultural development in the country. So this is why we have a wide number of stakeholders in higher education, in TVET, IPRCs, and other related private sector and agriculture stakeholders. We are pleased to report that NAFIC took Rwanda as a special case and consolidated funds under one program to support this project. Initially, we had a similar project scattered in many programs. This shows that the project of NISH 2 is going to be very well coordinated because it is under one umbrella. The importance of this is seen in the value chain approach of the activities and deliverables. And this is very, very important.
The project will focus mainly on the selected agricultural value chains: dairy, poultry, maize, Irish potatoes and vegetables, and produce what is considered important for sustained food security in Rwanda and for economic development and poverty alleviation. At the official launch of the SEAD project, private people, experts, and others who participated exchanged views, and some highlighted how this project is going to benefit them.
It is really something that will be benefiting for everybody. In the past, I am a business since 20 years now in poultry business. And the first thing I can observe is that there was really a kind of lack dialogue between the private sector and the education system. And as you may know, we are the labor market. And you are the one, or the institution, education system is the one who train, who form the employees that will come for the private sector. So we know what we need exactly. And this is why we really know what we want. We want experienced people, not only academic, but also practical skills.
I'm very, very excited to see that it's going to bring about change and the transformation in agriculture. Like we all know, the vision of this country is transforming agriculture. And we all know that capacity is very important. Without capacity, you're not going to get any productivity. I know we are, in agriculture sector, we are looking at increased productivity, but then we really need the capacity for that. And if we are going to do what this project is going to do, we are assured that we are going to get enough capacity, and this will lead to increased productivity. But more importantly, I'm looking at the extension services.
So, as a representative of youth in Agribusiness Forum, I'm actually excited to see how education is going to be strengthened to actually promote this agricultural development, such that the private sector is the one who's going to take the lead in informing the kind of education and curriculum that is provided to these young people, Because maybe the reason why young people are not so active in this sector depends on the quality of education that they're actually receiving at the school. So why not actually see where the problem is and see how we can marry the two?
The beauty of this project is that we are now materializing that dream, because it is as if we've been waiting NCBS to pull all of us together. If I remember when this project was being drafted, sitting with the rector from a private university, me coming from the public university, and our colleagues from TVETs. And what has been lacking is a doctor from a university doing a research, but taking the knowledge from the lab to the field, applying it to the extent that a TVET student can apply it and then transfer that knowledge to the farmer. That has always been lacking. We from the academy, we've been criticized really that we are not being seen as you are contributing to the needs of the country. And I'm glad and I commend through you, ES and the team, that this project now is being materialized and we are going to work together as a team.
During the discussion, also people were asking themselves how to measure the outcomes or the successes of the SEAD project. Participants exchanged views on this.
The success, what I perceive as success for me at the end of this project, is how many graduates, instead of just counting, like he said, counting the number of graduates that are coming out of these TVET and these higher learning institutions, how many of those have managed to create jobs for themselves? You know, how many have created wealth? You know, how many are engaged in this agribusiness, so that we see the relevance of the education you are giving in agribusiness.
And I think data and measuring success is the question here. The PS mentioned it in his remarks. How are we going to ensure value for money? How are we going to be able to measure capacity development impact? Mr. Gian, I think, said the same. How are we going to measure success? How shall we know that we have actually got what we set out to do? For me, I think this is a good start. And I think the young lady also mentioned, Lillian mentioned it, databases. So this is a good start for us. Capacity development is not as tangible as a road. It's not as tangible as buildings. It's indeed not very easy to measure, but there are so many ways we can do it. Quite often we know that when we measure success or results, we must set our KPIs and know that we are going to be able to track them. But it's not always as easy as it sounds for capacity development. We may have to do a mix of qualitative indicators. We may have to go into measuring success stories and tracking them. So for me, and maybe my message and what I would really look out for among all the stakeholders is to start with the end in mind and put in place all the necessary tools, all the necessary ways and mechanisms to not only measure the end, but to track it all along the way. And I really think we've tried this in NCBS. We've come up with a few mechanisms. We've tracked how success of capacity development can be done in most of our programs. So I think as stakeholders together, we can really achieve this. It's not as easy, but it's doable.
How does success look like for this project? I think we can be very straightforward in that. Of course, at the end of the day, NICE is an education project. So yes, we will develop education and training programs. Programs that at the moment are not there, or maybe those that are there need to be strengthened. We will capacitate the research function, especially in agriculture and water management. And we will develop tailor-made programs, tailor-made services that can be used for extension services. Because that area is at the moment not being serviced enough by the education sector. So, yes, that is what we're doing, but that is only the first step. Then we would, let's say, as the head of cooperation said, we would have a limited impact with, let's say, only supporting some education institutions. We go further. So at the end of the day, at the end of this project, success will look like that there will be graduates graduating from the programs that we developed, and they will be absorbed by the labor market, by the agriculture sector. We will see that extension workers have better tools, better training and teaching and learning materials that they can offer to the farmers. And at the end of the day, we will reach out to farmers that benefit from those extension services, that benefit from what the education sector is providing. So in the end of the day, it will boost the agriculture production quality-wise, quantity-wise.
The permanent secretary in the Ministry of Education, while officiating the launch of SEAD project, said that the government of Rwanda continues to undertake various attempts in capacity development aligned to national priorities. And the main beneficiaries of this project include University of Rwanda, Ines Ruhengeri, and the Integrated Polytechnic Regional Center through the Workforce Development Agency. The head of Development Cooperation of the Netherlands Embassy in Kigali believes that strong partnership and collaboration, the project will achieve its objectives.
Through a strong partnership between Rwandan and Dutch knowledge institutions that will work hand in hand, this program will achieve its objectives. It will contribute to solving issues around agricultural production, value chain management, value addition, as well as land and water management.
The Executive Secretary of NCBS, Mrs. Antonia Mutoro, calls upon all the concerned people always to give their ideas whenever approached. Ntivuguruzwa Celeste from the Ministry of Education ended his remarks by promising full support by the Ministry of Education.
I would request everybody participation because targets are very high and it requires the energy, it requires the coordination, it requires investment not only in money but also in time, because the time is also a very expensive resources. And I do not have any doubt that the leadership of NCBS will be at the top of that. I can provide the full support, not half support, but the full support of the Minister of Education. And I will end my closing remarks by asking also the full support for participating higher learning institutions and other government institutions, so that at the end of the project we can say that the success was for all of us.
The project was officially launched on 29th September 2016 and is being implemented in a co-management arrangement between the National Capacity Development Agency with the consortium lead of Mort McDonald, a Dutch international firm with extensive experiences in developing and management development projects in education, water, and agriculture sectors.